Well everyone, the Google Pixel 4 without a doubt is one of the more interesting Google Pixels that Google made, and I will tell you there's a lot of conflicting opinions on this. I feel like some people love this phone, and some people, I would say probably the majority of people are right in the middle, where this phone's not one they would think about as being an amazing Pixel, but also not like a terrible Pixel either, like the Pixel 3 XL. I think this is a very decent rounded phone, but I think with the decisions that Google made in 2019 compared to the rest of the market, I think they could have done a way better job with this phone. And I think 2019 was a very, very good year for phones, but it necessarily wasn't a good year for the Google Pixel. And we'll talk about that throughout this video. Now, if you want to pick up some of the newest Google Pixels that I would recommend buying this year, links will be down in the description. You can get them from there, and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the Google Pixel 4, this phone came out in 2019 at the end of 2019. And you have to remember this particular year gave us really good phones. The Samsung Galaxy S10s, the OnePlus 7 Pros, the iPhone 11 Pros, like even the iPhone 11, like we got a lot of really, really good phones in 2019, some that I still talk about to this day. But then we got the Google Pixel 4 towards the end of this year. And I think we got the Galaxy Note 10 that year too, which was pretty good. With this particular phone, the Pixel 4, we were getting a 5.7-inch POLED display, which I actually liked the size of this phone a lot. It was a smaller phone, and that was actually one of its bigger advantages, was that it wasn't this like massive like 6.5-inch display. It was a smaller 5.7-inch display, which was actually very nice. It was a 1080p panel, and we were actually getting a 90Hz screen on this thing too. For a vast majority of phones in 2019, we were stuck at 60Hz. The Galaxy S10s, Note 10s, and the iPhone 11s were all 60Hz, and that was a really big advantage for the Google Pixel 4 for giving us a little bit more capability from that perspective. Like, it was actually a really nice thing to have, and I do think this was probably one of its strong suits for it having that 90Hz panel. But stepping back, there was a little bit of a funny thing. I mean, it had a little bit less, it had a bezel on it, but it wasn't even that bad. Like, the front panel of this thing was actually probably one of its better advantages and better assets overall for this particular phone. Now, you were getting that, the USB Type-C port on the bottom, which again was very nice. And I would say the build quality of this phone overall was actually pretty good. Like, it didn't feel that cheap. The sides were, built pretty well. The only issue I would say for the most part was like the backside. You were getting this, like, I don't know how to describe it, like texturized material. And for some models, it didn't feel that great. Like, I had this orange model that Google sent me, and it really didn't feel that great at that time. And I talked about it at that moment. But since then, I bought like 3 more Google Pixel 4s and 4 XLs. And I think this one, like, it still feels like, it feels good. Like, it doesn't feel bad, but it doesn't feel as good, I would say, as the Galaxy S10, but it still feels nice, nonetheless. You are getting things like wireless charging. You are still maintaining a lot of other stuff all across the board as well. And it still feels like a pretty good, like, well-built phone, which is something that was really cool. So the exterior, I never really had that much of a problem with, to be honest. I did think, like, with the Galaxy S10 and with the OnePlus 7 Pro, we were getting a massively removed amount of bezels. And with this thing, I mean, it still had a little bit of bezel at the top and the bottom, but it really wasn't even that bad, to be honest. The price tag of this phone also has gone down significantly. So I've seen a lot of these things go for less than like $150, which is a pretty interesting price tag to pay. This thing really isn't like full on supported with software anymore right now either, but like it's still kind of there. So the price tag of this thing, like if you could buy it for like less than $100, that is actually like not that bad of a price to pay for this type of device. But you can see how much this thing has depreciated in about 5 years. With the iPhone 11s and 11 Pros, those things still have maintained their value quite well. And this one hasn't, but it's still kind of expected. Like, that's kind of what you'd expect at this point. So from that particular perspective on the exterior, that kind of covers it up there. Now, from the price tag side of things, or from the camera side, we've already talked about the price tag. From the camera side, this thing was giving you a dual camera setup on the back, which is very nice, and a single camera setup on the front. Now, the problem with this particular camera, I would say, first of all, wide telephoto lens is perfectly fine. But the problem I would say with the Pixel lineup at this moment was that Google was really banking on their cameras. From the Pixel 1 to the Pixel 3, I would say, their cameras were probably the best of the best. The Nexus lineup had a really bad camera lineup, but with the Pixels, they really improved it. But the problem that they had was that they didn't adapt to the time, and they just kind of kept the same sensor year over year over year, which was a really big problem. And by the time the Pixel 4 came out, yeah, they added an additional lens, but they still could have done a better job. Compared to the competition, they really didn't do that great. For example, they added a telephoto lens here, where they should have added an ultra-wide camera. And they bashed the ultra-wide camera during this press conference too. I feel like that was a very, very weird thing for Google to do at that time. But another very important thing here was that they did not give us 4K at 60 on the front or the back of this phone. We were still stuck at 1080p at 30 frames per second on the front camera of this thing, which was very weird. They should have given us 4K at 60. Honestly, unlike the Pixel 3, they should have done that. But even the Pixel 4, they didn't do it at this time, which I felt like was a very big problem. The iPhone 11, the Galaxy S10, all had 4K on the front and the back. This phone did not give us that, which again, to me personally, was a very big problem, and I feel like Google should have done a little bit of a better job implementing that, especially when one of the biggest selling points of their phones was the camera. Beyond that though, I think it was totally understandable with the way they approached it, but still, I think they should have focused in on that camera because that was one of the biggest selling points going on for this particular phone. So in this day and age, it still hasn't held up that well, but it's not that terrible either. But that is just kind of one of the things that I noticed with this particular device. Now on top of that, I would probably also say with this particular phone, you're getting the software side is also one of its biggest selling points as well. And that is kind of the cool thing, like when you're buying this type of phone, like you're getting a phone that's going to be supported with software for a lot of things, which is a very, very cool thing going on for this particular device. And that is something I love a lot. Like when I'm going through and buying a new device, I'm getting a device that actually has a fairly good future ahead of it on the Google Pixel side. But the thing here too to kind of keep in mind here is that with this particular phone, it is kind of, it was kind of on its last leg. We're like on Android 15 right now, and this thing stopped at Android 13. So it has been kind of done with software for a little bit of time. Again, not the biggest deal in the world. Android 13 is still like fairly good, but you're not getting any more like big major software updates. You might still be getting some security updates here and there. For the most part, it's not going to be as crazy big as you may have thought. So that in and of itself is another very, very big thing to keep in mind there as well. Now, from the performance side, you are going to be getting that Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset inside with 6 gigs of RAM. Now, I will tell you with this particular device, once again, the RAM side of things and the performance side of things, it's not even that terrible. Like, it's really not that bad of a performing device. And I do think that's a pretty cool thing going on for this particular phone. Like, if you wanted a phone that's just going to be able to, I guess, handle some of the things that you threw at it, I think that's a pretty good performing phone nonetheless. And I think, from an old phone perspective, this phone had basically the same amount of RAM as all the other phones in 2019. And it had the same chipset as the other phones in 2019. And you have the added advantage that it is going to be somewhat of a cheaper device, and also like it's stock Android, so it doesn't have that many crazy processes going in the background either. I do think this in and of itself was a pretty good advantage for this particular device, and I do think like if you're going to buy a Pixel 4, like it's really not that bad of an idea from a performance side. There's just a lot of other things that kind of irk me about this phone. But I will tell you from that side, alone, not that bad of a device. I think it still has a lot of capability, and it's still a very, very good phone nonetheless. And this is what I'll tell you. With the Google Pixel 4, there's definitely been worse phones that have came out, even since this phone, to be honest. But this phone was just a little weird. It was a little weird that Google didn't go through and give us, I guess, what they should have given us. And it was even weirder that a lot of other phones from 2019 were so much better than this thing. And that's just kind of what happens when you kind of, stay back a little bit. But regardless, I will tell you, with the Google Pixel 4, I love the Google Pixels. I think these phones were very decent when they first came out. But I will tell you, in this day and age, you are probably much better off purchasing something that is still supported with software. So phones like the Google Pixel 5, the Pixel 6, and beyond, the Galaxy S21s and newer, the iPhone 11 or iPhone 10 or newer, those phones are going to be better than these ones. So from that perspective alone, that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that will mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.